Okay.
Yes, sir, we get started.
Okay. All right. So why don't we do this? We'll get the show going. So the hosts, I'm going to hide the Cisco WebEx panel. So if something's not working, just let me know. And
Yes, sir.
I just get started. And if I'm completely
Yeah,
off track, just let me know, right? Okay. So you can see my
yeah.
screen
Yes,
and
sir, I can see it.
yeah, okay, perfect. And I don't know how to get rid of this. Let's see if I can move it away so you don't have to see that. So wonderful, guys. I'm super delighted to be with you. The title of the talk, I don't know how many, first of all, my apologies for sending the topic a little late, but here's the context, what we want to do in the next 1 hour. First of all, congratulations to all of you who made it through the successive entry filters in the Cisco Incubator. And I'd like to thank NASCOM and Cisco, I think Cisco folks for giving me this opportunity. I'll tell you a little bit about myself so you have some context, but what we really want to do in this talk is, you know, lots of startups, innovation teams have ideas. The real question is, how do you raise the impact of these ideas? So in this probably 45-minute journey, we're going to walk through some ideas, and I'll give you some context, background examples, and some tools to actually increase the impact of your idea. And that's central to the success or the failure of innovation teams and startups, right? So that's kind of the context. We'll fill you in more as we go along, but let's start the journey. So about a little bit about myself. I spent about close to 20 years, a little over 20 years at Intel. Worked on some fantastic products, new products. Some failed, some spectacular successes, but overall fantastic journey in terms of new product innovation, or NPI as it's called. I've also done a startup outside of Intel. That's the Semi India. It was the first B2B platform for solar photovoltaics in India. It's done in 2008 to 2011. I also helped found the Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship at PES University, and I have a background in both technology and management. And I currently I'm a professor of practice in innovation and entrepreneurship. I also am a guest lecturer at IIM Bangalore. Right? So that's my background. So I've had my share of fun and successes and disappointments. And out of all those learnings, I'm going to focus on one particular area that I hope will be very useful to you in your own journey as you go through. In order to keep this interactive and not just me, keep talking, I'd like you to pull out your mobile phone, your laptops, whatever you want. This thing will work on any of the platforms, including an iPad, an Android, iPhone, it doesn't matter. Just go to menti.com, pull up any browser of your choice, use the code that's on the screen. You don't need the space, 3205-5294, right? So we're going to use an interactive session platform called Mentimeter. So, and this will come up again, so don't worry if you don't get it, but go to menti.com, stick in this code 3205-5294. So one of the posts, if you could please put this on the chat, so if people are joining late, they can
Yes,
always,
sir.
access this, right? So, all right. So here's the context. Why is this topic important? Right? More often than not, you'll find that we're all techies, right? So say, hey, we got this great algorithm, got this great heuristic, we got this fantastic machine learning model, or we've got this fantastic circuit, the super duper oscillator thing, and let's go build a product, right? That's typically how ideas come to life. But is that enough? If you have an idea, how do you know it's a good idea? And what can you do to make it a winning idea? A winning idea simply means that there's not just you and me saying that it's a great idea, but somebody says, "Hey, this idea actually transformed my business or transform my life. So how do you convert, just a fantastic idea in our own minds into a winning idea? And lastly, even if it's a great idea and somebody's already got a product or a service, something similar, how do you stand out? How do you make sure? For instance, Swiggy was not the first, food delivery company. Lots and lots of examples. Apple was not the first company that did an MP3 player, right? So there was already a company called Creative that had already done it. There's actually even one company, even before Creative, that went on to have the first digital MP3 player. So it's, the question is, even if you are entering a market where that particular idea has already found its way, how do you stand out, right? So that's the context for this talk. And that brings us to this first question, which can now see what you're sharing. Okay, hover around the idea to access control third. Okay, all right. So I'm showing you 5 things. Now, some of you are probably not even born when this was. So let me give you a quick overview of these products, right? Ford Edsel. Ford is a great company, spent $400 million, and what they said was the next big thing in cars. That was Ford Edsel. Sony Betamax, technically the very superior VHS recorder, right? So there were 2 things. There was the Sony Betamax and there was the VHS from JVC. And Sony Betamax was technically more superior. Apple Newton, first PDA ever. Microsoft Zune, they said, this is going to be the iPod killer. HP Touchpad, they said, this is the iPad killer, right? But what's common among all this? So to answer that, just hold your thoughts. Let's go to this thing and see if this thing works, where we do this thing and we say present. Okay. And we'll do this. So you've seen those things. Okay, they're all the same, I hope. Okay, these are all failed products. Okay, first of its kind, Blueprint, HP Touchpad. So second place, 2 ahead of its time. Very good. Right? So you're starting to good stuff. I see failed products. Unfortunate. Yeah, they were unfortunate, right? Somebody spends $400 million on a car, new model, and boom. Apple Newton spent $100 million, went nowhere. They all failed, right? So you got it right. So these are failed products. Great companies, awesome product development teams. They had, designers, technologists, marketing, big budgets, and this can happen to the best, right? So you're getting an idea. Cutting edge technology, but yeah, technology is at the center, right? What you guys are saying, hey, technology, but work poorly? Not really. These products really actually work reasonably well, right? Great, right? Apple Newton, even though it had hand recognition, was it perfect in 1993? No, but it was the first one. But so it was good technology, worked decently, but as a product, they all failed, right? So want to understand that a little further. Thank you. Very good. Right? You guys jumped in and let's go back to our regularly scheduled show, right? So the key thing there is great products, ideas, fantastic ideas, right? For instance, Sony Betamax, right? How do we capture video and make it affordable for consumers? Apple Newton, first hand recognition, first personal digital lesson, all that fun stuff, right? But we know now that technology alone just doesn't cut it, right? It's great, but not sufficient, right? That's the point we're trying to make here. Okay, the question is, why do startups fail? And in a broader sense, why do ideas fail? If all these were such great ideas, first PDA, first video recorder for homes, why do such things fail? So we'll again go and see what you guys have to say. Why do ideas, the startups fail? What do you guys think? And if you just joined in recently, just go to menti.com, stick in this code 32055294, and you'll be in business, right? So why do ideas fail? Overestimate, right? Okay, you're saying, oh, market size is, $10 billion when it's $10 million, right? Incorrect market. You think, this is the market that you want to attack, but that's not the market that's the right fit for you, right? Wrong team, not the right team, lack of strategy, lack of money, all good answers, right? I'm trying to see if one of you will pick up something that I'm looking for. Not the right team, not proper functioning. Yeah, okay, sometimes product, they don't work as designed, but customers need not met. Now, who's this genius who put this in, right? Customers need not met is one of the primary reasons for startups to fail. So thank you. Yeah, I think all good answers. None of them are wrong, by the way, right? Execution, very good. No investments, marketing, expectations, timing, less customers, lack of cohesive strategy, commitment to the idea. Fantastic, right? So all of these are right answers. But the one that tanks the startups or your best ideas the most is, are you meeting the customer's needs? So let us switch back to this thing and just look at this chart, right? This is from CB Insights. Just Google CB Insights and say startup failures, and this will come. And this is done through some extensive analysis, also corroborated by a number of other things. The first thing is no market need. Let's take a moment. We'll pause. We'll unpack what do we mean by no market need. Market comprises of customers. Customers have needs, and if those needs are not met, customers don't buy your products, and therefore, leads to failure. Number one reason. Of course, there's number 2, 3, 4, 5, all of the things that you guys pointed out, right? You don't have money, not the right team. The competition did a faster, better, cheaper version of your product, price, cost, all the good things that you mentioned. Right? But the number one reason is nobody's asking for the product, right? We think it's a great idea. Oh boy, I mean, I'll do this thing, and this thing is the next best thing to sliced bread, and boy, this mobile phone will sell like hotcakes. Well, if the customers don't think that way, it's not going to go anywhere, right? So the number one reason why ideas or innovation efforts fail is when you're not solving a market problem, right? And we decoded what a market means. A market is comprised of customers. Customers have needs. And why do they even buy a product or a solution? They want to fulfill their needs. And if you cannot satisfy that, hey, not much use. So let's distinguish idea and product, right? Most often than not, I mean, this happens with real startups. I mean, they confuse the idea and the product to be the same. Not true. So what are the distinguishing features? If you want to say, how do I see one or the other? First is an idea is a vision in the mind, whereas a product, if done right, has a certain utility to it, is useful in some sense. Second, it's able to create value for the customer first, right? It's not about startup making money or being successful. First, you have to create value before you can capture value. And the third is it has to have some kind of an impact, right? And you'll see at the end of this talk, the definition of entrepreneurship, right? And the impact, we will define it there. But the impact has to be there for the customer, right? And only if that happens, then can you say. So in the journey from idea to market or a product, there are a number of things that happen. Everything from converting an idea into a plan, a blueprint, and then building a series of artifacts, proof of concept, a prototype, minimum viable product, leading up to a product, and then that goes into that, right? So this is a journey that you've all sort of undertaken in the Cisco Incubator, where you started with an idea, and then you hopefully will end up going to the marketplace, and with all the intermediate steps, we're going to focus our efforts on this part, right? This middle part, where you start with the idea, hopefully you go to the market. There's some magical things that need to happen. So what are some of those magical things? So the first is, the big question to ask is, how do you maximize the impact of your idea, right? Ideas by themselves, we have said, is good, but not great. So the first thing is we've also proved that just great technology, right? One of your teams said, we created the best, machine learning model, right? ML model for, understanding local language, right? Or text to speech or whatever it is that you're working on. But we know that, great companies, great products, just take a nosedive. That's alone is not enough. So what do you do? So a bunch of questions that you need to be asking. If this idea were to be converted into a solution, we'll call it. A solution can be a product, service, whatever. So we just use the word solution, but substitute it with a product or a service, whatever it is that you do. So who will use this, right? Who's the customer for this? And does this solve a real customer pain, right? And we use the word pain, not a customer desire, right? People actually pay money for something that they really need, right? Where this thing can, this is like a balm, right? You apply the balm and there is pain, and the pain goes away, and you don't mind spending any amount of money for that. And will customers use it? Not just need it, but will they use it? And the more important and equally important question is, will customers pay for it, right? If you just offer something to them and say, hey, this is a great product, will you take it? I'll say, yeah, sure, give it to me. I'm making, give me 10. But then if I say, well, this thing costs, 20,000 rupees, suddenly I say, well, let me see. I forgot to bring my checkbook today. Can you come on the first of the next month when I have money in my bank? I mean, all kinds of fun stuff comes about. And truly great ideas, truly great product ideas or solution ideas go one step beyond. They just don't solve the customer's pain. They actually go on to deliver some customer gain, right? So let's take an example of, just to illustrate the difference between the pain and the gain. You hire or you take an Uber, to go from A to B, right? You want to go from your home to the university. Now, that's solving the pain of transportation. You could have taken a bus, auto rickshaw, cycle, scooter, whatever it is. But on that day, you're going for an exam, maybe you have a slight sprain in your leg, and you don't want to take chances. You take a Uber or an Ola. That's solving a pain, going from A to B. What could be the gain? The car is comfortable, it's clean, and it's well maintained, and takes a good route. The driver drives well, and you can actually open your textbook or your notes or your cell phone, and you can revise your portions for that particular exam, or at least it gives you a nice peaceful place, and you're able to kind of revise all the portions. You can see some of the things, the last minute stuff. That's the gain part, right? You could have gone by bus. I mean, that'll take you from A to B, but the gain part of it is, you found that quiet time. For me, I used to take Ola or Uber, just so that, I used to travel about an hour and a half between my home and office. But if I take an Uber, I can get on a conference call. I can make about 5 or 6 calls by the time I end up in office, right? So that's the gain. So it's very important for great ideas and products to deliver, not just solve the problem. It needs to go one step beyond, right? So that's something that you might want to keep in mind. And that brings us to the central idea of this whole talk. Value proposition. What value proposition does your idea deliver to the customers that would make them use your products, that will make them pay for your products, and therefore, put you in the center of their universe? Right? So we're going to spend the next couple of minutes really doing a deep dive on this value proposition, because that is at the heart of any good product, any good business, including the business model canvas, which you guys are all familiar with. But first, we want to define what's value. And to do that, we will again take the help of this, and we'll let you define. In the context of a startup, what does value mean to you? And there's no right answer, guys, so just go for it. How do you define value?
So basically anything that solves a problem.
Hey, just type it in here. We'll see. We'll see what's cooking in your mind. And of course, if it's not working, then we can always have the audio version. Just type it in, some words. You can only put 3 words per, or 3 answers per person. So just see. What do you guys think? I'll just not speak. Yeah, can monetize the essence of it, what is on offer, what to expect, how much of a market fit, purpose, future prospect, benefit. Nice. Okay. Now you're getting close. Yeah. What's an offer? Here's my product, and customer satisfaction, great. Benefit, purpose. These are good ones, right? So I think you're getting it, right? What's the purpose of this thing? If I bought your product, if I really embrace your idea, what does it solve, right? So good stuff, right? So we'll go back. What's values? Very simple, right? Very simple. It's the usefulness of a product or a service, the benefit that your product or a service or a solution gives to the customers. And the key part, and this is, I can't repeat enough. Here's one, if there's only one thing you take away from this talk, it's this. Most often than not, we say value. Oh, okay, what's the value? Oh, it's a very high value, low value. We do all that, and we usually have money in our minds. And what I want to do in this talk is to dispel that notion. Money is important. Money is central, but you'll find that great products don't just deliver value from a money perspective. Because if it did, half the good products would go away. Right? And we'll show you some examples. So I want to just start by making a provocative statement that when we say value, money is in the equation, but it's not the only thing. Right? And we'll dive a little deeper into this thing. So let's formally define what a value proposition is in the context of a startup, in the context of an idea. It's a bundle of products and or services that can create value, as we just defined, utility, for a specific customer segment. You cannot create one product that, for instance, I have a cheap phone. This is not going to make everybody happy. It makes me happy. I use it as a phone. But most of you guys actually use it as a really good camera. Many of you will probably say, I don't even want a DSLR. I don't want a digital, single reflex lens. I'm just, I'll buy an iPhone, or I'll buy a Pixel 5, whatever it is, or an Oppo, Vivo, whatever it is, your favorite thing, right? So it's a particular customer segment. What value can you create, right? And it's usually not just one thing that does it. It's usually one thing plus some thing that creates. That's the value proposition. It's the proposition. You have a proposition for the customer, and that's, essentially in the simplest way. Now we want to dispel some few things. And value can get sometimes complicated. So we'll define this a little further and refine the notion of value. And suddenly you say, oh, wait a second, you're talking about value, and suddenly I see price and cost, and what's all the difference? So you have to really understand the difference, right? And so we'll just describe this a little further. Cost is what it takes for you to put your product together, right? Money value of the resources involved in producing something, right? There would have been a cost factor for building this, just the amount of money that it takes to assemble, put it together, and bring it to you. Price is the money that I paid for this phone, which is hopefully bigger than the cost, right? And then finally, the value. That's the utility of a product and service. You're scratching your head now. Oh, wait a second. I understand cost and price. I understand. I read this in my 8th standard, right? Selling price, cost price, selling price minus cost. If it's a positive number, is profit. All that I understand. But where is this value stuff? So, and this famous saying by Warren Buffett, right? Price is what you pay. Value is what you get. Now let's try and understand this a little better, and using a pictogram. So all of you understand there is a certain amount of cost involved, over which there's a profit, and then that becomes your selling price, right? And on top of that, if your product, if your idea is great, there's another value that you provide, which results in the total value of the product. So the total value of the product arithmetically is the sum of cost plus profit plus any incremental value that you create for the customer. That is the total value of a product, right? So the question I would like each of you thinking as you go into the finals of the Cisco Thinkivator contest is, hey, we've come a long way, but is our product or service, is the total value that we are trying to deliver using this idea, using this product, using this service, is that greater than the price that we're going to be charging the customer in the end? I want you to ponder over this question not just during the talk, but after that, and revise maybe your business model canvas, maybe revise your cost structure, maybe revise your value proposition, maybe revise any of the elements of the business model canvas, because at the heart of a successful product or an idea is, have you created a value that is over and above the cost and the price, right? So one or two more slides, because this is super important. Most people don't get this, right? Most people don't think, they say, can I sell it at a higher price? Well, yeah, you can sell it at a higher price. The real question is, are you delivering a higher value? So one last slide on this, so that this thing is stuck in your thing. And this slide is about who decides who decides what in this thing. The first one is price. We all know, right? We go to a marketplace, I go to a showroom, a mobile showroom, and say, hey, the guy says something like 18,000, and say, hey, do you have a discount? It's Diwali time, it's festivities, I'm sure you have some offer going, right? That's something that we negotiate between the buyer and the seller. Cost is something that's negotiated between the supplier of all the raw material, of the components, in this case, the mobile phone. So that's between the supplier and the seller or the manufacturer. Value, interestingly, is decided by the buyer alone. So remember the last time you bought a car, a pencil, a water bottle, a computer. The value is decided by you. Why did you invest in an Apple? Why did you invest in a Dell? Why couldn't you have just bought a tablet? So, and we'll show you through an example that the value is something that the buyer alone, and there's a lot of things behind it, right? There's a lot of psychology that goes on behind this. For instance, the value of a product is not something that's constant. It's something that changes over a period of time. For instance, if I bought, if I buy gold today at 50,000 rupees for 10 grams, tomorrow it may be 70,000, tomorrow it may be 30,000. But if there is some sentimental value attached to it, the value I attach to the jewelry, right? Sometimes you see people cry and say, oh, I lost the jewelry, but it's not the gold at all, but something that my grandmom gave me, or something that dad gave me. So value works in very different ways, and part of it is financial. A lot of it is also psychological, right? So I want you to understand that you should spend the time understanding what value means. It's not something, a number. You can start with a number, but it goes well beyond just a number. So I hope you've got a sense for how to look at value, how to interpret value, so that you can build some blockbuster products. I want to use this very simple example to drive home the point. This very simple question that I have is let me give you some context, right? I'm not a great musician, but I like this thing because it's a simple thing that we can all relate to. What I'm showing is on the leftmost side is you see the lady with a tanpura. What is a tanpura? It is essentially a musical instrument, right? That's used as a tonal pitch or a reference in Indian music. So that's as much as I know. I'm not a great musician, but you've all heard the tanpura. That gives sets the reference tone. On the leftmost side, right, you have a real tanpura. It's a wooden instrument. The last when I put this foil together, this is about 3 years ago that I put this foil together. It was about 17,000 rupees. I actually went to a music shop and I said, hey, what's a good tanpura cost? 17,000 rupees 3 years ago. Okay. I also went and said, okay, this is from a company called Redel that's based out of Bangalore. It's been doing this electronic tanpura for a long time. I put the model numbers just in case if you want to go. So yeah, a small box. I wish I could have brought this. My daughter uses it when she sings. A small box you can carry. That's okay, and that costs about 4,000. E-tanpura with it's got a little bit more bells and whistles. The tabla, it's called the milan. That's about 8,500. Still less than a tanpura. Right? Then of course there's tons of apps. Okay, and we all know that most of the apps that we use is pretty much free. Now my question to you: which of these four things is the highest value product? Now you can use audio. I don't have we don't have the Mentimeter. You can just chime in saying you can just tell me what you think. Which is the highest value product here? I've even given you the numbers, right? The most expensive thing is on the left side. The cheapest thing is a zero price. is another thing. Which is the highest value product?
It depends on the
The chat
user.
says app.
App, and why? Why is it the highest value?
It's free of cost and
Free of cost. Okay, great. You've not been listening to me all this time, but good. I would have picked it too, but we should look for other answers. Okay, what are the other answers we have?
It depends on the customer section we are targeting.
Okay. Now you're starting to peel the onions, right? So it depends on the customer. Can you elaborate that? You're on the right track. Okay. Can you elaborate and build on it?
Farmer would like to take
So,
the
suppose if we are talking about Tanpura, that can go well with musicians who are old in age, who are not that into digital world, and then e-Tanpura could go for the youngsters, and e-Tanpura and e-Tabla could go for the musicians who are professionals, and the app could go for the millennials.
Okay, very good, right? So I wouldn't have what you said is absolutely true. I think there is an element of age, but that's ultimately in my mind that's not the decider. The decide. Okay, so good stuff. You're on the right path. Others want to build on this notion of one is age. Okay, I buy that. But what is the more fundamental thing? Somebody said that at the beginning. What the customer is trying to do. Can somebody build on what this gentleman just talked about?
Maybe other than age, it's also what the customer's needs are. For example, if it's a professional musician who's going to perform somewhere, they will probably prefer the tanpura itself for the authenticity and it adds to the performance. But if it's someone who's just training and needs to do it, needs accessibility in different places, then they would go for an app because it's on their phone. It's like a train.
Now you're digging into the needs of that customer. And by the way, the lady, let's just say she was a professional singer, and as you rightly pointed out, I think that was Meda, right? Meda Kopam. Fantastic,
Yes.
right? Now you could find the value of the product actually depends on the context. The same lady, if she's going to a concert, will definitely say, hey, I need my tampura. And we've all seen this in the airport, right? People carrying massive guitars, cellos, Venas. I mean, and they're more worried about that over everything else in that airport thing when you pick up the luggage. Like, oh God, that's because, I mean, without that, they don't have a place in the concept, right? Now, the same lady is going to, an evening thing among friends and, somebody's birthday party, there's a nice event, a family event, and she says, hey, and people say, they always ask me to sing, but I need my pitch, and I'll just carry my mobile. She'll probably just carry her phone and she'll have that app installed. There's some very good apps, and and just use that as a pitch and sing, right? And somewhere in between, let's say she has to travel quite a bit. It's not very accessible, rough roads. I have to take a train and a bus and a taxi. The e-Tanpura, maybe the more sophisticated one. Maybe there's something better than the Milan. She'll take that and she'll say, yeah. So you see, it's not just the age, it's not just the value. Oh, zero, free. Yeah, hey, great value. Sure. The age comes in, the price of the thing comes in, but ultimately the value of the product is decided by the need and the context of what the same person might own all these three things, right? She might own the Tanpura for professional concerts. She might own the Milan, the proper Tanpura plus the beats for semi-professional, right? Places. She might have the app installed on her phone for those places where she just needs to, sing and not have to worry too much about, all the acoustics and such. So the context, so the point here is the context is super important for the job, right? This is called the job to be done. And if you just Google job to be done, there's a tremendous amount of literature on the job to be done theory, right? So I wish I had the chat, but just search job to be done and there's a huge stuff that's behind this thing. And so it's very important before you decide the value, before you decide what the customer needs, you've got to understand the context. If I'm selling one of these four, and by the way, the same company can do all four, but rarely do you find that. And there's a whole story of why that does or does not happen. is you want to understand the context, right? So with that, let's move to the next one. So by now you have a really good understanding of what value is, what it is not. The question is, how do you craft a good value proposition? The first thing that you want to, that you need to understand is what. So here are a couple of key questions that you can ask. What value do we want to deliver? So in the previous example of the Tanpura, is the value of, hey, you can still have the tonal reference in the most compact thing. Then it's the app. Do you want the best reference sound that is closest to the real thing? Go for the Tanpura, right? So first you have to decide what market you want to play in, what value you are trying to create, who are the customers, and what are the needs that you're trying to solve? What's the biggest problem? Because even in the Tanpura, there are many things. Can you get a tunable one? Can you get a thing that self-adjusts? I mean, this is true in guitar. I don't know much about the Tanpura, but what problems? Even within the professional singers, they might have different needs. If you're building a professional instrument, then you need to understand that. Why would your customers prefer your solution over, let's say you're a Tanpura manufacturer, or let's say you're, the e-Tanpura manufacturer, you're all engineering graduates, and you say, hey, I can bring in a lot of good electronics, and I can even put some, AI ML into it, and it'll recognize the noise, it'll do some noise cancellation, whatever it is that you're trying to build. But there may be another one just like that. So why would somebody choose yours? And who are you trying to serve, right? Which customer segment? So these are some questions to ask. And I want to give you a tool, but before I share the tool, I want you to take away what are the key components of a value proposition. The first and the most important thing is the context, because this is a simple water bottle, it's steel, but if I'm taking this to office, this is a bad one, right? This is a 1 liter thing. It's heavy. It's already got some, scratches and nudges, but this is not what I would carry. So the context, is it for home? Is it for office? If I'm going hiking, I'll definitely not carry this. Right? I'll carry probably a lightweight copper, plastic. For that 1 day hike, I literally carry a very thin. It's almost like it's made of tin, but it doesn't add weight. This thing adds a ton of weight, right? So the context of what you're doing, and that's the jobs to be done thing that you want to refer to, right? And in that context of whatever the customer is doing, in this case, the Tanpura, the person is she a professional player? Is she an amateur who sings, and light music during evenings? Does she give concerts on the fly? And things like that. What are the pains? And then, of course, does that Tanpura make her feel good, right? Does it fit well? Does it carry well? Does it break easily? All of those things, those are the gains, right? It's not just meant for making sound. It has to go beyond the sound. Is it easy to carry? Is it easy to pack? Is it, somewhat rugged, right? Just because somebody dropped it in the airport and if that damn thing just breaks. So there are a number of things that one needs to think about when you think about the value proposition. And these are the three, big pieces of the puzzle. Right? And so there's something called the value proposition canvas. Many of you may be familiar. If you're not, you can use the three components that we just talked to, essentially capture the customer context in the form of the jobs that they're doing. What are the pain that they experience? And what are the gains that they expect to see when they're using this product in the context? And then using that information, you can build, what kind of products or services can we build where, think of the gain creators and pain relievers as features of the product, right? Some features are meant to address the pain. Some features are meant to bring in additional benefits, right? And so essentially, the value proposition canvas can be used as a tool or a framework to frame the context of what the customer is doing, what he or she is really wanting or needing, and what they expect. And you combine all of that, and then hopefully you can craft a good product or a solution which has features or benefits, somebody pointed out earlier, that addresses the pains and gains, right? So hopefully, and if you just Google it, you'll find lots and lots of examples. This is by Strategizer, right? The same set of guys who created the business model canvas. So you will find tons and tons of reference material, YouTube videos and such. So I recommend that you take a look at it. Now we're almost down to the end of the talk. So why do I bring this up so much? So this is one definition of entrepreneurship that I like very much. And I'll just read this out. Entrepreneurship is when you act upon opportunities and ideas and transform them into value for others. You see, the word value is in the center of the definition of entrepreneurship. And that value can be financial, but it can also be other things. Let's say you're interested in doing a not-for-profit, right? Financial is important, but it can also have social value. It can have cultural value. So this is, I like this. This is one of the broadest definitions of entrepreneurship. And if you look at it, any good definition of entrepreneurship has value at the center. So it's really important for you to understand the value in all shapes and forms, so that the idea, so that the startup, so that the product or the solution that you're bringing, can essentially be of very high value to your customers. So in summary, if you want to raise the impact of your idea, you have to do a bunch of things, right? A good idea solves a challenge in a clever way, and that's usually a differentiated thing, right? So why does Apple have the ability to sell the laptop for $400, $500 more than, say, the other guys, right? So the Windows thing. I mean, at least the laptop I'm using now is a Apple laptop, which uses Intel microprocessor, probably uses, I don't know, Sony or a Samsung or an LG, whoever makes the screen. And, all the other display controllers, drivers, all stuff that, it's not made exclusively for Apple. But when Apple puts it all together, they sell it at an amazing higher price. Why? That's because of the higher value. That's because they bring differentiation. But it's not just in the hardware. It's a lot to do with the software. It's the way the thing looks, the way the battery life is, and a bunch of things, right? And you do that, you get there by having that laser focus on who's your customer. Apple is very clear on who their customers are and who their customers are not, right? It's not just who it is, but you also need to be able to say, we will not serve the needs of these many customers, right? So Apple is very conscious, for instance. And so is, for instance, Asus or Dell or Lenovo. They have very clear idea of who they're serving. They're not trying to serve everybody. Although we think, anybody can go buy any laptop. When you actually make the decision to go buy a laptop, just go through the conditions or the checklist that you had. You might say, I need the greatest GPU. Right? And then you say, okay, I'll go buy the laptop with the NVIDIA GTX something, right? So you have to understand your customers really well, have that laser focus, understand what value you plan to serve, what's the proposition that you plan to. And we didn't go into this in today's thing, but you have to tell a story, right? Great ideas sometimes fall by the wayside. They just are flushed down the toilet when you cannot communicate that value properly to your prospective customers. And of course, you can't build a great idea, convert a great idea into a product if you don't have a great team, right? So these are some of the things. Of course, I've not spent a lot of time on some of the other aspects. We've spent a lot of time thinking about value, because if you don't get that right, no great team, no amount of storytelling, no amount of customer surveys, none of that is going to help you, right? So that's why, I keep coming back to this. And that's the end of the talk, and I wish you all the best. We have some time for Q&A. We'll let the moderators decide how much time we have, but I can spend, the next 10, 15 minutes answering your questions, doubts. And I also, once we do the Q&A, I can also share, since I've been on the jury of a number of things. I'm not on the jury, by the way, of the Cisco Incubator, so don't worry. So I'm not judging any of your ideas, but I can tell you what ideas usually win, right? And there's no secret. I can share that open secret with you after we get done with the Q&A. Thanks. Thank you for your attention.
Yeah, I think those who have questions can either unmute or put it in the chat.
Yeah. I'll stop sharing. Okay, stop Here we go. Stop share. Wonderful. And yeah, actually, you ought to see the chat. Are you telling me everything I said was so clear that you got it absolutely right the first time? Boy, I don't think I'm that good.
Does Akash want to ask a question? I mean, he tried.
Audio is fine. Just ask a question, type it in,
Just
whatever works for
unmute
you.
and ask away.
Yeah, just yeah.
Yes, sir. Am I audible? Hello.
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, sir. Sir, what my question is that how do you actually define market need? When I am saying this is basically that if we look at any startup, it usually takes 5 to 7 years at the very least to become a good company. So take one, for example, Paytm, I'm saying. So before demonetization, Paytm was a very small startup, and people even started saying that Paytm got lucky during demonetization. So basically, the need was kind of created afterwards, the massive need which is kind of required for a startup. Similarly, you can see Dunzo here. Dunzo was a delivery company and it grew the most during COVID, and no one could know that need. So now, what my problem is that if I wait till that, like if I wait till demonetization to happen, and then I try to launch Paytm, maybe 3 days later after demonetization, then probably some other player in the market is already gonna be there. So how do we basically define that?
Yeah, so but I have a philosophy, right? So did Vijay, right, the founder of Paytm, did he wait saying there'll be some magical moment and there'll be something called a demonetization? No, right? Entrepreneurs get started with a definition of what they think is the worldview. None of us have a crystal ball that says, oh, there's a demonetization, oh, there's going to be some GST, oh, there's going to be a thing called COVID coming. None of us know, but we all believe that, for instance, I don't know, but I have not heard him speak, but I'm sure he would have thought that the world is moving towards some kind of a non-cash payment, right? That would have been the premise with which people would have started with the e-wallet concept. Of course, they were one of the very first ones. And then, serendipity, right? This luck thing comes along. COVID did many good things to many good companies, did not so good things to many companies. So that's part of the journey that as an entrepreneur you have to take. But the thing that you must have is at a particular point in time for a particular market, you must have a compelling value proposition. Now, is it constant? Does it stay the same? Absolutely not. Even if there was no COVID, even if there was no demonetization, the customer's needs evolves, and none of us understand all of the customer's needs completely at any given point in time. So startups have to be nimble. Startups have to be very agile in terms of the changing environment. So the short answer to this is not to say wait for that golden moment where I can read the crystal ball and anticipate. It might have happened, might not have happened, right? But I think Paytm would still have had a journey. It might have been a different journey. But the premise that we need to move away from cash and bring the convenience, which is beyond the credit cards. Credit cards are also a form of non-cash, but the penetration of credit cards is like 1 to 2% or 3% in India. So hey, we need some other alternative, right? And then came Aadhaar, and the fact that Aadhaar took off. Then there is this demon and a bunch of other things that came along that helped, right? So entrepreneurs don't sit and wait for these things to happen, because in fact, not just entrepreneurs, nobody, not even the best guys can predict the future. So you don't wait for the future, you create the future, right? There's a very famous saying, the best way to, there's a Peter Drucker quote, right? The best way to invent the future is to create it. I don't know, I don't remember the exact thing, but if you just Google Peter Drucker and creating the future, you basically create it. You go for it. And somewhere along the way, some of these things come in and help. sometimes they may not help you, right? Some of the companies got wiped out during COVID, so that's just a fact of life. Great.
Understood, sir. Okay, sir.
Maybe let some of the other folks ask, and then we can always come back. Having a product ready, how do you gather your customers around the product? You should ask the question the other way. How do I build a product around customers? This is a fantastic question, but this is exactly what tanks startups. And by the way, I've also been on innovation teams in large company, right, in an enterprise, and we built products that nobody bought, right? And then we say, oh, the market window was not right. Oh, the timing was not right. That's just looking in the rearview mirror and saying, oh, we screwed up, right? Rather than say that, oh, the market window. This is exactly what happens in most of the cases where we build a product first and say, hey, how can I rally all the customers around it? By then, you're already, I'd use the word when I'm on camera, but you're out of luck at that point. Right? So the good question that you ask, so you don't do this. You don't gather your customers around the product. You gather, you have a customer in mind and then build a product around it. Think about it. And then when you have the traction, yes, right? Then you need to do a bunch of marketing activities, branding activities, and other things to gather customers around that. But the first thing, if you're an entrepreneur, right? Like you're in the Cisco Thinkovator, you've got an idea, you're building something. At this point in time, you should really worry about, do I understand the customer, their needs, the value proposition, and then build a product. I hope that addresses the question. I think it was Pranav, right? Pranav, does that make sense? Oh, a lot of silence. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, he says yes in the chat.
Yeah. Other questions?
Hello, sir. Yes, sir. Hi, sir. I'm Medha. And so there are quite a few cases where a company becomes successful despite there being a competitor in the very beginning who has similar services and who meets quite a few of those customer needs that, say, my company wants to provide for. And some of them became more successful because they did some things better. But how did they initially start off when there was a very similar company who is actually answering those needs?
Do you have an example in mind? Very, very deep question. I'll answer that. But do you have can you think of an example?
Maybe Swiggy and Zomato.
Very good. Excellent. So they were not the first guys. So your question, let me understand your question. You say there's already somebody who's offering a particular value proposition in the marketplace for a bunch of customers, for a specific customer segment. And then I want to enter the market and I want to compete and I want to win. Is that the correct question? Is that a question that you're asking?
So how do you start off in that case?
How do you start off in that case? Okay. So let me give you another example. It's a famous example. Airline industry, been there forever. It's 70s. And, there's a small, tiny startup company called Southwest that came out, had 2 planes. And they operated not out of the major hubs like, Dallas, San Francisco, Phoenix, Chicago, New York. No, none of the stuff. So it's operated out of a very small airport with 2 planes. And this is a highly competitive marketplace. All the big guys were there, right? United, Delta, name another, 20 odd airlines. They were all like 100 times, 1,000 times bigger than this Chotu plane company with 2 planes. Right? Herb Keller was the CEO and the founder of Southwest Airlines, had found an insight that basically said there are a bunch of people that are not being addressed by all these big airlines, and they are typically in smaller places and they fly shorter distances. And so he came up with what's called the Southwest model. Basically, he said, we'll never fly from the big airports. We'll fly from the small airports. We'll fly short distances. We'll only keep one type of plane. And the plane in question is this Boeing 737. And there are no seat numbers. There are no seat numbers. You just come. This is like a bus. You get on board, just take the first empty seat. No first class, no business class, all same class. Right? So a bunch of things. So it's a bunch of insights and the value proposition that Southwest had for a customer segment that had been completely neglected. So airline industry, airports, all those things existed, but the value proposition for a big customer segment, which is people who are going from small place to small place with a very small budget. So he identified the needs. So great companies, when they take on large companies that are already in the marketplace, come with a fresh set of insights that either the big companies have overlooked, or they say, that's a market that I don't want to play. Right? So, so at the heart of that question that you are asking is a very brilliant question, which is, how do I take on something? So you have to come up with insights that either the big companies have, or the existing players have overlooked, or what is called they're underserving the needs. It's not that they don't know, but they're saying, I don't need to serve that audience. I don't need to serve them this well. I don't think I want to sell a water bottle that's less than 500 rupees. And that gives an opening for a new person to come in. And that's where you craft your own value proposition. Hey, we'll do it cheaper, faster, lighter, or I'll trade off, right? And in processors, we do this all the time. We trade off power, performance, and power, right? Power consumption. And so if you look at why ARM, did much better than Intel in the mobile world is, Intel was always saying, hey, we've got to, prioritize performance, and power is important, but not that important. ARM said exactly the opposite. Power is everything when it comes to small devices, and we're going to trade off performance, right? So it's an insight. And so if you want to take on the existing players, you have to do some really deep search in terms of understanding the market trends, the customer needs. Sometimes these are called latent needs, right? Customers will not come and tell you, oh, I want power. I'm very power conscious. I want 12 hours of battery life. And don't give me, I'm willing to give 10% of performance. They'll never come and tell you that. So you have to go and spend the time. And that's where, there's a lot of both an art and a science of how you do it. And there's a science and art behind that, but I won't go into that. Does that give you a feel for how you can take on existing competition? It comes through insights. It comes through a differentiating. Remember the last slide I showed you? A differentiation, and at the heart of a good value proposition in an existing market, right? There are 4 types of markets: existing, new, resegmented, and clone market. So in an existing market, you really want to come up with a differentiated value proposition.
Yes,
I
sir.
hope that addresses your question.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
Yeah, low-cost carrier model, and Southwest was the flag bearer of the low-cost carrier model, which everybody and their brother copied. And of course, today, low-cost carrier model is it won't even make news, right? There are even in India, there are like multiple ones, and abroad, I mean, you have Ryan, you have Blue Giant, I mean, there's a whole bunch of things. But the first guys who started that thing, right, was to understand that there are a bunch of customers whose needs are not being met, and here are the 5 things that they need, and putting together an organization and a service around that, right? So wonderful, good stuff. Any other questions?
Excuse me, sir. Like, how is this kind of startup scalable? Considering the case of airline startup, suppose in a country there are only 5 minor airports. So those kind of airline companies can only cover those 5 minor airports, and if they plan to go big, there are very big players there, so they won't stand a chance. So how is this scalable?
Yeah, it depends on the marketplace that you're competing, right? If you're doing this in Vietnam, then probably this is not the right model at all. So there's a whole bunch of things. So when we say customers, how many customers? What's the market structure? What are the segments in this thing, right? So Southwest was able to do it because they figured out that there were a lot of people that were using cars to travel 200, 300 miles, spending 4 to 5 hours, 6 hours, and when offered an additional with a small incremental fee, if somebody said we'll take you from, say, Dallas to Austin, right? So it's a short distance. People said, yeah, sure, I'll pay a little bit more, and if it gives me the convenience and such. So your question is a brilliant one, which is you also have to look at the market structure, right? So it's not just, you don't stop at the customers, but you have to go one level above to say, what is the market structure? What's the market opportunity? How big is the potential? And if the potential is not big, then there is very little room for scaling. So it's a function of the opportunity, the market, and the structure, the market structure. Does that address your question?
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
All right. I think we've come to the end. I hope, first, I wish you all very best journey in your Cisco Incubator thing. And I hope that's just the beginning of your journey, and that you go on to do, other fun stuff. And, that's it. Yeah, have fun. And you've come this far, and I'm sure you guys will go a good deal further in this journey. Some tips for winning. Okay, you still remember that. Okay. So these are, kind of what I've seen over the years. So let me just share. And this is kind of the anatomy of some winning ideas that I've seen over a number of years. I think you can see it in my screen, so I'll just let this be. All right. I'll make it big. Okay. So I've listed a bunch of things. So let me quickly, and these are fairly self-evident, right? So don't stress only the tech part, right? It's good tech is great, but it's not sufficient. One of the questions I answered, I think it was Meda's question. How do we build some great stuff? I know this thing already exists. I want to take on Swiggy, right? Or I want to take on Flipkart, and people have done it, right? Myntra came, Jabon, Snapdeal. Some were successful, some not successful. But building those insights. It's another session to say how do you come up with insights. That's a different session. But getting a good understanding of insights. So in a competition, if you can just even say, look, these are the insights we've done, and we teach this in one of our courses that we offer, the CIE level 2, right? How do you come up with these insights? There's something called, a prototype that you could build, and you build your own data, right? Your own data, or Yoda as we call it. So there are a number of ways to generate real insights, and if you can even share with the panel that, hey, well, we don't have all the insights. Here are some insights we have. That presents, that gives people an idea. Say, hey, this is something different that these guys bring to the table. The third is capturing the market opportunity. How big is it? And people usually say, oh, it's a $10 billion opportunity because I found it on Google. But can you come up with a realistic estimate of what the real market opportunity is? Something that you can actually do, right? Because if I say, well, what's the total market size of all the water bottles? I don't know, maybe it's $1 billion, but can I build $1 billion business out of making water bottles? Probably not, right? So a realistic assessment of what the market opportunity is very important. The product that you replace product with solution, offering, whatever, is there a good product market fit? So I've designed a product, but does it fit? No, the great question that somebody asked. There's a market with 5 airports, and I built this wonderful low-cost carrier model. Yeah, great model, but is there a product market fit? No. So demonstrate the product market fit for whatever it is that you're working on. Fifth one, demonstrate that you have a great team. Hey, I've got a team. One guy can work on algorithm. One guy can work on UX. One guy has, the guy's a real, what we call the hustler vision model, right? So this guy can just go make it happen, right? He'll go find somebody, I need to borrow this thing. I need a 3D printer. So you need a great team to execute an idea. It's never a solo performance. So talk about your team. What does the team bring to the table? Tell a compelling story about your solution, right? I've seen a lot of good tech ideas. They'll say, oh, here's the thing, here's the algorithm, here's the equation, here's the pricing. And I say, man, can you tell how this thing fits into the overall story? Can you tell it with conviction? Can you tell it with a lot of passion? So have a very cogent thing. Less number of slides, but better storytelling. 7th and 8th bonus, icing on the cake if you can do it. Have a prototype. Walk in with a prototype, even if it's a paper prototype, even if it's an Excel spreadsheet prototype, even if it's just something made of kg cardboard, right? Just to demonstrate what this idea. And I'll tell you this one little story. We had a girl 2 summers ago. We did a summer workshop, and her idea was to build, a water jug. And she's from computer science background, but she built right there on the table using an R with kg cardboard cutter, and she said, "This is the thing," and it had a temperature thing. Fantastic, right? So she just went on and just stuck something on the side with a post-it note and said, "This is what if we were to build it, this is what it would look like." And the jury was just blown away because they could visualize that this had a thermometer, this had a spill-proof thing, and all just built out of kg cardboard. So build a prototype. And even better still, if you have, if it involves code, if it involves a 3D printing, fantastic. But otherwise, just build something. And the last one, can you show a path to saying, okay, we built this prototype. Here's a great idea. Here are the insights. And by the way, we have not built the full product, but if you build the full product, here's how we can take it to the marketplace. Here's how we can get it into the hands of customers. Right? That's an additional icing on the cake. If you do that, then people get an idea that it's not just an idea, it's not just a product, but you have, at least a notional idea of, taking it all the way to the market, right? It's not just enough to create some wonderful product and say, oh, I have it here in my lab, but it has to reach. So these are some things that I've seen over and over again. So if you can, model some of your things according to this, then, might help you. Right? I'm not saying this is the formula for winning a competition, but these are some of the important things. I hope this was helpful. All right. Time to call it a day, I guess. It's been a long day for you. It's been a long day for me, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please pass on your comments to the folks so that I'm sure I can always do better next time. So if you have any comments for me, please send it to your moderators. And I request the moderators to send those comments to me if you can, please.
So thank you so much for this. I think all of us really enjoyed it. We had a really insightful session from you.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you so much, sir.
Good luck and best wishes, guys. Take care.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.